So last week I got to play some Age of Empires 4 during the game's stress test, and it reminded me just how much I love and have missed this genre. Despite the fact that it's been quite some time since I played an RTS, it still holds a special place in my heart. My first exposure was through the original Warcraft games, Orcs and Humans and Warcraft 2. I was around 9 or 10 when these came out, and still clearly remember going over my friend's house to play them for the first time. The process of starting from scratch with one building and some workers, and then harvesting resources, constructing new buildings, amassing a huge army to send out and demolish the enemy, that whole thing is so satisfying. After that very first game, I just wanted to do it again, and that loop really set the groundwork for the genre. In the following years, I spent some time with some other RTS games. I played Command and Conquer, which brought the genre from fantasy into a more modern military setting. After that, it was StarCraft, which took it out into space, and then Age of Empires, which of course brought it back in time. Each one of these games with their own unique twist and features, but having the same basic foundation that I really enjoyed. There's been plenty of other RTS games that came out over time, but those four were the pillars of my experience with the genre and the games that I associate with it the most. After some years away, I returned to RTS with the release of StarCraft 2. Some of you might remember, about 10 years ago now, this channel began with me covering that game. I did commentary, guides, and in general just really loved playing and talking StarCraft. But that was 10 years ago. My RTS skills are a bit rusty at this point, and the genre has also been on kind of a hiatus. You don't really hear much about RTS games in the past 5 or 10 years. Regardless though, I was keen to brush off the dust and jump back in when I heard that Age of Empires 4 was coming along. Well, like I said, the stress test happened last week. I played for a bit and thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not sure if this is going to be a leap forward for the genre necessarily, as much as it just kind of felt like a modernized update to what I remember Age of Empires being. But the bottom line is, yeah, I played it and had a ton of fun. And what I want to do here in this video is take you through my experience with Age of Empires 4, show you a little bit about the game, what I saw. But before we jump into any of that, let's get a brief word from today's sponsor. Today's video is being sponsored by Displate. I've worked with them in the past and came away really pleased with their stuff, honestly. I'm sure you've noticed in the back of my videos, I've had their stuff hanging up for quite some time. Really, it's pretty simple. It's nice artwork printed on a metal canvas. Now, I just got 4 brand new ones. I got some space-themed art. I got this cool map of Berlin, Deutschland. And I got this one, which, you know, it's pretty soothing looking. It calms me down. I really like it. Over on their website, there's over 1.4 million designs apparently. So there's pretty much something for anyone, whatever your interest. You like gaming, anime, nature, movies, you're bound to find something that fills your interest in something that you would like. And like I said, this stuff is super easy to hang up on the walls. They have this magnet mounting system. You just clean the wall, put down the sticker, plop the magnet on, and then you can just throw plates and swap them around pretty easily. And hey, apparently here they say that for every Displate sold, they plant a tree. So thanks for helping save the environment. That's pretty awesome, Displate. So if you're interested in checking out Displate for yourself, go ahead and use my link in the description below. Doing so will get you a 26% discount if you get 1 to 2 plates and 36% if you get 3 or more. Okay, so now I want to take you through my experience with the most recent Age of Empires 4 stress test. Upon booting up the game, I got the typical stress test disclaimer. Things may be broken. Of course, we expect that. We also get this wonderful bouncing watermark on our screen. Thank you very much. I know why this is here, but also it's kind of annoying. Anyways, I click through the disclaimer and start poking around the menus and immediately notice there's no single player. RIP. I am not ready for competition at this point. I barely remember how to play these games. So I figure the best thing to do is just play it safe and do a large team game. So I queue up for a 4 versus 4. I figure, hey, that takes the pressure off of me to perform. Let someone else carry the load. You know what I mean? So I queue and sit there for, I don't know, like several minutes. Not a single player joined the lobby. Clearly, I was the only one who was too scared to do a 1 versus 1. So I back out of that, I poke around the menus a bit more and realize, hey, there's an option to play co-op versus AI. Awesome, let's do that. I end up finding a partner fairly quickly for this, and while the match is loading, there's some useful information and tips on the screen. And this reminds me that Age of Empires was the RTS series with multiple win conditions. You can either destroy all of the enemy landmarks, or control all sacred sites, or build and defend a wonder. I had totally forgot that this was a thing. I'm just so used to StarCraft's rules of destroy every last enemy building. I think it's pretty awesome awesome that this series has multiple win conditions. I mean, I know like at the top end, there's clearly going to be a meta, like what strategies are best and how you accomplish them for the most skilled players. But everyone in the middle and lower brackets, I think it's pretty exciting that there's like multiple potential ways that a match could end. I'll probably find out myself since I'm clearly going to be in the middle to lower bracket. So we're still loading after a while because I'm pretty sure my teammate's power supply is plugged into an electric generating potato. And after about an eternity, the match begins. Also, in case you forgot, this watermark here reminds us it's a stress test. The map loads in. I am super excited to play for the very first time until I immediately realize I can't scroll down. So a few months ago, I upgraded to an ultra-wide monitor, and for the most part, it's been amazing. The only real downside is when I'm trying to record 16:9 resolution footage here for YouTube, but the game that I'm playing doesn't support 16:9 while also being full screen. So for that reason, I was playing Age of Empires windowed, and because of this, when I tried to pan the camera down by bumping my mouse to the bottom of the screen, it was not working. And for me, this is awful. I tried to play for a few minutes using the arrow keys to pan the camera, or double clicking my keybinds, or even clicking directly on the minimap. None of this was cutting it. It just felt so awkward not being able to pan my screen down. So apologies to my teammate, but I had to leave. I quit the match, physically moved my monitors around so that I can play on the old 24-inch 16:9 I had, and then boot the game back up. And while I fussed around with the menus now on my new monitor, I realized at this point that I can do a custom verse AI. So fantastic. There's no pressure of playing another human, and I won't disappoint a teammate if I end up having to quit again. So now let me take you through the AI match that I had. The map load in. I immediately test to make sure screen panning works with the mouse. It does. Relief sweeps over me until I realize I still don't remember how to play these games. So let's take a look at what we got here. We got a town hall and some villagers. Now I remember this much at least. Like most RTSs, you split the workers up in a few groups to harvest the different resources that are available. Here in Age of Empires, there's 4. There's lumber, food, stone, and gold. This is like basic RTS stuff. Now I'm sure there's a meta to this. Like maybe you start with everyone on food or lumber or something, depending on what your build order is. But all of that is way too far beyond where I'm at with the game at the moment. So I just kind of split them up evenly. Also, I swear I picked English, but this language they're speaking doesn't sound like English. I thought to myself, hey, maybe it's like a dated version of the language, but no, I looked it up. It's basically just gibberish, kind of like Sims do. Anyways, the gibberish-speaking workers are harvesting away. My scout is out scouting. Check this out, by the way. Your scout picks up sheep as it passes by them. The sheep will like run along at full speed with him. I think this is so cool. And then you can also command the sheep to go back to your town so they can be harvested. I'm so sorry, sheep. Here too, before we really dive in, I just want to reiterate, I remember playing Age of Empires as a child, but I don't remember any of the specifics. So like some of the stuff I'll be talking about might be like, duh, you idiot, this has been in all of the Age of Empires games. I'm okay if you think I'm an idiot. It's all fresh to me, and I'm just going to explain what I experienced the way I experienced it. So yeah, the scout picks up sheep. I think that's pretty cool. I like it. Anyways, now it's time to start the standard RTS cycle. Building workers, harvesting resources, constructing supply along with other buildings, creating an army, getting upgrades, and trying to win. Okay, so I start churning out villagers from the town center. I order one of them to build a house. This costs a little bit of lumber and raises my max population, which of course means I can make more workers. And more workers equal more resources to afford other stuff. I start constructing some of the resource-specific buildings, beginning with this lumber camp, which I place at a nearby forest. These are really neat because they let your workers drop off resources, specific resources at them instead of having to walk all the way to town center. So my villagers harvesting wood in this area can now just go straight to the lumber camp instead of heading to town. And of course, a shorter walking distance means I get my resources faster. After the lumber camp, I put up a mining camp next to this gold source, a second mining camp next to the stone. And here I also tell a second villager to help with the building because I remembered that this is a thing. Basically, you can have more than one villager helping to construct buildings faster. I think this is another really cool feature about Age of Empires. While doing this, I noticed that the worker distribution interface is there at the bottom left. This is really cool as it tells you exactly how many workers you have harvesting each of the game's resources. I don't think I have to explain why this is super helpful. Now, not that I know what I should be doing here. I'm sure there's some ideal number of workers per resource depending on your build or your strategy. strategy, since I haven't a clue, I just keep making more villagers and kind of spread them out evenly. Although almost immediately I do realize I should definitely have a priority for food, as I started to run pretty low as I kept making more villagers who cost food. So I build myself a nice little farm here and start routing some more workers to the nearby berry bushes. I check up on my scout, who's made its way about halfway around the map's perimeter at this point. Also, the dude's got like an entire flock of sheep following him. What a badass. And feeling the pinch for food, I also constructed this mill. Like a lot of the other resource-specific buildings, villagers can drop off food at these mills. Also, later I realized that the mill increases the harvest rate of surrounding farms, which makes my placement of the mill right in the middle of these berry bushes very awful. I should have put it somewhere where I could just build farms all around it. Oh well, this is all just part of the learning experience. It's okay. My mill finishes and I spot some available upgrades in it. There's this wheelbarrow which increases carry capacity and movement speed for villagers. Very nice. That's an easy decision. I also check on the lumber camp and it's got a forestry upgrade that will double my tree harvesting speed. This is another no-brainer. Start researching that. I check back up on my scout. He has passed this sacred site as well as a relic. I then also get a pop-up that immediately sends me into panic mode. Apparently my opponent has reached the feudal age. Oh shit, I don't know exactly what this even means, but I'm sure it's bad news for me. While I'm here screwing around with workers and getting harvesting upgrades and following my scout around the map, my opponent, who at this point I still haven't found, by the way, is now in the second age. So I assume I'm screwed. My next move, figure out as fast as possible how to get myself into the feudal age. So I start clicking around in a panic, checking out every building, looking at the different upgrades, mousing over all of the tooltips. You know, maybe I need more houses, so I build another house. I knew at this point I should have definitely played through the tutorial. And then all of a sudden, my scout lets out a whistle, which was really cool. I go and check to see what's up, and it's my opponent's scout. They have found me. Things just keep getting worse. And then, as if the game realized that I had no clue what I was doing, a massive pop-up in the center of the screen said, "You are ready to advance. Click here." Thank you so much, game. I appreciate it. I get a barracks going since I realized I don't have an army yet, and then I select a villager to get us into the next age. And at this point, I have a choice. I can build basically one of two landmarks. There's the council hall, which can produce longbowmen very quickly and has upgrades for them, and then the Abbey of Kings, which will heal nearby combat units. I decide, since I'm clearly behind and the enemy might attack at any point, to go with the council hall so I can start cranking out some longbowmen. I have tasked a pair of villagers with constructing this massive building. Very impressed with these two, by the way. Two people building this massive hall. My next order of business was to start getting an army. So I begin training at the barracks a few men-at-arms. I ramp up my food production by placing down some farms around my newly created mill. And I also get some more homes going so that I can make sure I have enough supply. The council hall then finished construction, which moved me into the next age. And what I love about this here is that there is a literal visual upgrade to your buildings. Like the town hall, your homes, and other buildings will look differently as you move from the first to the second age. I think that's a really cool, nice little touch in Age of Empires. This upgrade also unlocks access to a bunch of new research. I could get faster food gathering, mining, lumbering. So I, of course, decide to get all of that stuff going. I also researched an upgrade for my men-at-arms, and I used the council hall feature to start training some longbowmen, which will research or train twice as fast. My scout lets out another hearty whistle, and then I see this small platoon of enemies headed in my direction, so I move my units to intercept theirs, and the very first conflict commences. To start things off, there's a nice clear trumpet alarm when your enemies engage combat for the very first time. The two of our forces collide, and I just absolutely crushed them. For one, they were outnumbered. Also, I had way more archers, so it was all over pretty quickly. I did a little bit of micromanaging, pulling back some of my injured units. I don't know how much of a thing this is in Age of Empires, but it's just a habit from when I played StarCraft. I also want to point out at this point how great the combat sounds are. Hearing the clang of the swords against armor and shields and the sounds of the arrows being shot. There's also this really cool combat yell when they first engage, or when my army was chasing down the last few stragglers. soldiers. This dynamic mix of sounds between the soldiers making noises and the weaponry, it's all pretty impressive stuff. I really, really liked it. So after winning this first little battle, the enemy got some payback. They killed my dear sweet scout and stole his flock of sheep. They will pay, I promise you. The next few minutes of the match was a continuation of everything I'd been doing. I was doing some more harvesting, building some more army units, homes to supply them, and getting some more upgrades. I notice here at this point too that the game has an idle worker feature, which will tell you if any villagers are just standing around. I had a few of them at this depleted stone vein, so I moved them over to get to work on another stone location. Another group of enemies show up at our base. This was minorly disruptive, but I was able to take them out. Also, I noticed at this point that your troops will cheer immediately after winning a fight. The combat sounds in this game are so neat. That's really, really cool. So I make and send out another scout to get a good look at the enemy base. I don't know exactly what I'm looking at this point. This is my first match, but at least now I know where they are. And with my villagers harvesting away, I now had enough resources to upgrade to the third age. So once more here, when going into the next age, you have two options. I had to choose between the White Tower, which acts as a keep, or the King's Palace, which acts as a town center. I decided to go with the tower, and while that's building, there is another attack from the enemy, which I repel. I then start construction on a stable so that I can make some mounted units. And then also, sick of losing my villagers with all of these little skirmishes, I decided to build a few outposts. These basically give this huge line of sight bonus, and they can also be upgraded with some weaponry like arrow slits to help defend themselves. So I keep cranking out more units, getting upgrades for them, and then the enemy attacks again. This time though, they had a battering ram, which allowed them to take down one of my towers. They also came in with a second attack from the other direction and obliterated my poor farmers. Sufficiently annoyed at this point, I decide, okay, it's time for a counterattack. I grab every offensive unit that I've built so far and start making my way across the map. Now, halfway across, I had this really cool moment. My army, with the mounted knights in the front, followed by some melee units and the archers, they were making their way down this hill when they then ran into a group of enemy forces. At that point, my mounted units started shouting and charging forward. They surrounded the enemy, followed immediately by my footmen who moved their way around, with my archers and the crossbowmen staying up on the high ground, picking away, raining down their arrows. All of this with the combat sounds mixed in from the various different types of weapons and the units themselves shouting and screaming. This was just kind of this really cool epic moment just in this simple like attack move battle. I wasn't doing any crazy micro. It just felt cool like from a presentation standpoint. It was really, really neat. So we just demolished them, and then my forces continued their march towards the enemy base and started picking apart their town. The enemy had some defenses back home, but not much. I started taking out some buildings along the edge and then moved my way towards the center where their town hall was. Now I then decided, I gotta do some reinforcements. So I quickly went back to my base, made sure I was training reinforcements, getting a few of each type of unit on every building. I also grabbed some of my inactive workers and made sure they were harvesting resources. I constructed a few more buildings, all the while, like a bad RTS player, completely ignoring my army who was in the middle of the enemy base. As a result, when I checked back on them, I had lost every single unit because the town hall was just lighting them up with arrows from the inside. Okay, lesson learned, I got it. So I took my new, much larger army a couple minutes later and then pushed out for a second attack, all the while building some more reinforcements, but this time paying attention to my army. More conscious of their town hall, I decided to stay on the edge at first, picking things off from a distance. I had some more ranged at this point too. And then I fully committed to the attack. I went straight for their main building, surrounded and took down the town hall. I sent in a second wave of forces to join the engagement. The enemy at this point really had no defense left, so they didn't put up any fight, and I quickly finished off the last of their two landmarks and won the game. As a recap, I think it's crucial here for you to understand, this was a very simple match versus intermediate AI. I have at this point no idea what I'm doing, and I am absolutely certain that I was playing terribly. I was certainly inefficient, I was doing things incorrectly, almost everything I was doing was probably wrong, but still, to me, The whole thing was epic. Feeling very proud of myself, I then immediately jump into a PvP match, and this time having a better grasp of the flow of things and what I should be doing. I think I played a tad better in terms of my execution. I built up the various harvesting stations, got my upgrades and unit buildings going, and I made myself a little army fairly quickly of footmen, some cavalry, and archers, and I just marched straight towards the enemy's base. The other player had a way smaller army, so I took them out quickly. I then destroyed one of their 2 landmarks, and they immediately quit. So that's a recap of my early experience with Age of Empires 4, playing through the stress test. And I have to say, all in all, I had a fantastic time with this game. I've heard some rumblings about Age of Empires 4. I don't know ultimately how good of a game it's going to be. There have been some complaints from the stress test, but coming in with what might as well be a fresh set of eyes, having stepped away from this IP for so long, it having been so long since I've played any Age of Empires, it was just really, really fun. The battles felt epic even in my small junky matches versus someone who didn't know what they were doing and versus an intermediate AI. It just felt really cool, even with how haphazard everything was executed. And you know, what's funny too is that if you just told me that Age of Empires 4, if this game that I just played was actually just like Age of Empires 1 or 2 remastered, I would probably believe you, because what I played feels like how I remember the game playing when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Everything's vague and hazy enough that I would believe that just this was those games, basically. That's how out of the loop I am with it. So I don't really know how much like new kind of genre pushing forward is going to be in Age of Empires 4, or how much is there. But from a pretty much fresh set of eyes, it was fun. It was cool. It was cool to build up an army. It was cool to move that army across the map, and it was cool to crush both of my bad opponents. What else could I say? There you go. That is a look at my time with Age of Empires 4. I had a good time, and after playing the stress test, I can confidently say I will give the game a look when it launches. I'm excited. If nothing else, I'm excited to be into RTS again, and I'm excited that there's a new big budget RTS game coming out, because it's been a long time since we've really had any of those. So it's pretty cool stuff. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you as always. Thanks for the support, and I will see you in the next one.